Welcome
to North Higgins Lake State Park. North Higgins Lake State Park is just over 400 acres, has 182 campsites. They also have mini cabins, and apparently there's a pop-up camper that they will rent you, which is kind of unusual. I haven't seen that at any of the other state parks yet. One of the big draws here is Higgins Lake. It's a big lake, and in fact, there are two campgrounds on the lake. There is North Higgins Lake State Park, and there is South Higgins Lake State Park, which we'll take a look at in another video. Both have campgrounds, and both, I understand, are quite busy in the summertime because of the lake. It is a good-sized lake. There is a boat launch here if you want to put your boat in it. I will note that there are still warnings or advisories out about swimmer's itch in Higgins Lake. And I found it sort of interesting that in the pamphlet, in the map for the campground, they talk about how the state and the local government have worked closely to minimize the risk of swimmer's itch from Higgins Lake. Notice they didn't say that they'd gotten rid of it. They just said they minimized the risk, and they give you a link to a website where you can find out more about swimmer's itch, how to protect yourself from it, and how to deal with it. I would keep that in mind if you're looking to do any sort of swimming when you head down to that lake. There isn't a lot of privacy between campsites at North Higgins Lake State Campground, and the size of the sites varies as it does in most state parks. So you're going to want to look at that when you're making your reservations. The other thing to keep in mind is to look for sites that have 50 amp service if that's what you need. This is one of the parks where the state has started to upgrade its systems, and it looks like just about every other site, at least in this one loop that we're in today, has 50 amp service, and every other site still has the 30 amp service. All of them also have 20 amp connections. So keep that in mind when you're looking at the different sites. Most of the sites here seem to be pretty level. You're not going to need to do much to your rig to get yourself in a level situation. One of the things to keep in mind is that right now we're here in mid-April, and it only has one loop open. And in fact, there's only a few spaces available on that loop. But as you can see, there's still snow on the ground, and it is mid-April. So I guess that's understandable that this isn't really a very busy season for them right now. As with many of the state parks, there are mini cabins that are available here at North Higgins Lake, and that's available year-round. So that's something to keep in mind if it's something you want to stay in instead of a rig or a tent. And there are, of course, bathroom facilities that are open in season. They're not open year-round because they do shut the water off. The other thing to keep in mind as you are booking your sites is we were in Site 83, which is one road in from the end, and we were still hearing quite a bit of road traffic. So depending on how busy the road is at different times of the year, you're gonna have to put up with some road noise here within the park or within the campground, depending on which site you're in. Again, we were in Site 83. The main road that you first come in on is the one that has these mini cabins, like the one that's behind me here, and then the next road over is where the campsites start. But this road that we're on with the mini cabins is right near the main road. I'll turn around here and show you. So this is the road coming into the campground. And then as you turn here and you look right behind me through these trees is North Higgins Lake Road, which can get pretty busy, I would imagine, at certain times of the year. So, you know, it's not necessarily real bad, but it's something to keep in mind as you're picking out your site if you want to go a little further back into the campground, so you're not quite so close to the main road. As I mentioned before, there's 182 sites in this campground, and they've got them packed in pretty tight in order to get that many in here. And you will find that there's not a lot of privacy. Some of the sites are much smaller than others. I think it's just a matter of where they could fit them in. And there is a playground here for the kids to enjoy, or the big kids and all of us, I suppose. But keep in mind, too, that depending on where you pick your site and you reserve it, you may end up with a site that backs up right to the playground. So if you have kids, that might be a bonus to you. If you don't have kids, might be a site you want to stay away from. In addition to the boat launch, this area of the lake also has a narrow beach that you can spend some time on. And it's nice because they have picnic tables and some grills set up under the trees that run up right up to the beach. There's a playground area here for the kids. There is a bathroom facility all right here on site, so you don't have to worry about going back to the campground, going back to your rig or the facilities that are there. So it'd be a nice place to hang out, have a picnic. There is a trail that you can take to hike in from the campground over to the beach. I'm walking through a lot of snow right now. I'm assuming by June the snow will be gone up here in northern Michigan. I suppose there's no guarantee, but it's a pretty safe bet that you will not be traipsing through snow to get to the beach if you come here in the summer. There's a number of trails here for hiking and cross-country skiing at North Higgins Lake State Park too. They are loops, and they range in distance from the shortest one, which is about 1.5 miles, to the longest one that is about 6.5 miles. And I think the one that's in between is just shy of 4 miles. So some variety depending on the type of workout you want to get or what you want to do with your time spent hiking. I don't know the exact distance of the footpath between the campground and the parking lot for the beach, but it's not very far. It didn't take me long to walk it at all. And I think it's probably smooth enough, even though it goes through the woods, that if you wanted to bring, say, a wagon or something to carry your supplies, you could probably do that. It's a little rougher to walk on right now, as you can probably tell, because it's icy and snowy and very uneven. The closest city to this state park is Roscommon, and some people may have heard of Roscommon because there is a big DNR conference center. The Ralph McMullen Conference Center is located within this park. It's just down the road from the North Higgins Lake State Campground. And that's actually where Jessi's at today. She's in a meeting all day. She is an appointee to the Trails Advisory Committee for the Department of Natural Resources. And this is the first meeting that she has attended as a member of that committee. So congratulations to her for getting that appointment. And she is there representing ORV users, which we do have Jeep Wranglers that we go out and enjoy the trails on. And I think that's going to be a big part of her message when she's in these meetings is, how do we maintain these trails? How do we keep them open? How do we make sure that everybody has a chance to enjoy the woods in whatever way that they want to? We do own Jeeps. We've been off-roading in them. We have a 4-wheel drive van, which is what our road trek is. And so we get out on 2 tracks with that. But we also like to hike. We get out on our mountain bikes. There's people in this state that are big on the ORV that are the side-by-sides. A lot of people use snowmobiles. And if we all work together, we can keep those trails open and available for everyone, and that's going to be key. So kudos to her for getting that appointment and for taking on that volunteer responsibility of taking care of our trail system. In addition to the lake and the campground and the hiking trails, North Higgins Lake State Park also does something to celebrate its history, which it has a museum for the Civilian Conservation Corps and the workers who were here as part of the state's first tree nursery back in the 1930s. Civilian Conservation Corps had workers here that were helping with the nursery and restoring the land and that kind of thing. So there's actually buildings that have been preserved, and it's open as a museum at certain times of the year. And it's just kind of a cool way to take a step back in history and see some of the things that they were doing and the way they were living. And it's kind of a neat little piece of the park that you might not realize is here if you don't go looking for it. Another piece of history they have here at the CCC Museum is a couple of old fire towers. And prior to 1913, they used to have fire officers that would climb trees or hills to look for smoke. And then later on, they ended up creating these steel windmill towers that they would climb to the top of with binoculars and a portable telephone. When they spotted smoke, they would call a fire officer on the ground who would go and investigate. Down here, closer to the ground, they have the enclosed top of a newer fire tower that would replace the old windmill type towers. So clearly it's not very tall here, but that's just the very top of the tower. Those would actually be taller than the windmill towers, but they were enclosed, which made things much nicer for the fire officers. So as I mentioned, we have heard that North Higgins Lake State Park gets pretty busy in the summertime. You're going to need to plan ahead if you want to grab a site at the campground, although in both a good way and a bad way, that's starting to happen at a lot of state parks in Michigan as they get more popular and get more use. There's a lot here, though. There's the campground, there's the beach, there's a boat launch if you want to go out onto Higgins Lake. There are hiking trails. There's the CCC Museum and the Nursery area where you can kind of step back in history a little bit and see what was going on. And it's a good opportunity to check out northern Michigan. So plan ahead if you want to make a reservation and get a site that you really want, but certainly a place that I'd consider checking out again when the snow is gone and you can actually see the beach instead of just climbing around on blocks of ice and snow.